Shocking news out of Washington.
Senator Lindsey Graham from South Carolina died last night at 71 years of age from a brief and sudden illness.
Senator Lindsey Graham toured a Ukrainian drone factory, flew home, and spoke with the president by phone. Hours later, he was pronounced dead from what his office called a brief and sudden illness. But not everyone is buying that. Here's what exactly happened. The final trip. On the evening of the 11th of July, 2026, Lindsey Graham died at home in Washington at 71. Medics were called near 8:30, found him in cardiac arrest, and rushed him to the hospital where he was pronounced dead. There was no known illness, no long decline, and no warning. For a man his allies had just described as sharp and energetic, that silence around the cause is exactly why the story would not stay quiet. Because barely a day earlier, Graham had been nowhere near a sickbed. He was deep inside Ukraine on his 10th visit to the country since the invasion. For more than 2 decades, he had been one of the Senate's most recognizable hawks, a voice that never met a fight he did not want America near, and one of Kiev's loudest backers in Washington. This time, he went to see the weapons up close.
So according to local reports, U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham visited the production facilities of Ukrainian UAS manufacturer Skyfall on or around July 10th of 2026 during a trip to Ukraine.
The plant he toured builds the machines rewriting this war, from the vampire heavy bombers that Russian troops uneasily nicknamed Baba Yaga, to a sharper new weapon that plainly held his attention.
The reason that Senator Lindsey Graham was particularly interested in the P-1 Sun interceptors because they were specifically designed to intercept and counter Russian UAS like the Shahid Jarin-style UAVs and other aerial threats.
He left praising their work as some of the most advanced he had ever seen and pressing to arm Ukraine with more of it. Across the trip, he pushed for deeper drone cooperation between Washington and Kiev, warning it would be a mistake for America not to build the technology alongside them. Then he boarded a plane back to Washington. He would not survive the weekend. The sudden death. The news broke late that night, and even the anchors reading it out stumbled over the name.
Senator Lindsey Graham is dead? No, not Mitch McConnell. You heard me right. Senator Lindsey Graham from South Carolina died last night at 71 years of age from a brief and sudden illness.
His office released only a short statement, calling it a brief and sudden illness and asking for privacy. Did not say what the illness was, and it did not have to. Within hours, the gap between those few words and the man just seen on television began to fill with theories. What little did leak pointed one way. Emergency crews had been called to his Washington home that evening after a report of cardiac arrest, and the dispatch language raced across the internet.
It was a call for cardiac arrest. We have to emphasize that. We cannot confirm at this moment that the senator died of cardiac arrest.
Reduced to its bones, the sequence looked stark. He was in Ukraine. He was pushing a sanctions deal against Russia. He flew home. That same night he was gone. It was clean, it was fast, and it left almost nothing to hold on to. No hospital stay, no announced diagnosis, just a healthy-seeming senator 1 hour and a death notice the next, except for one piece of the evening that refused to sit still: his last phone call. The last call. Just hours before he died, Graham was on the line with President Trump, and they talked politics, not health. By Trump's telling, the senator had called to say a bill they had pushed for was finally set to move, and he sounded like a man with plans, not a man in danger.
Said he just landed from Ukraine. I said, that's a long trip to make. He said, he sounded a little tired, but perfect.
The president kept returning to the same point. Whatever took Graham came out of nowhere and came fast.
Other than being tired, he was fine. And so it had to be something like that would just be a quick end. And maybe that's not the worst way to go.
That is the detail that lodged in people's minds. Fine on the phone in the evening and gone before the night was out. Commentators kept circling the same disbelief that a man who seemed perfectly healthy could drop so suddenly. He had turned 71 just 2 days earlier and was booked to appear on Meet the Press the very next morning. For a man who had just crossed half the world and kept a packed calendar, the speed of it stunned even his closest colleagues. Instead of an interview, the questions took his seat. The questions. Across the networks, the same doubt kept surfacing.
How did he go from a somewhat healthy-looking guy who flew back from Ukraine and hopped on the phone with the president to somebody who is no longer alive?
Most of the suspicion traced back to why he had flown to Ukraine at all. Graham had been the driving force behind a sanctions package aimed at buyers of Russian oil, a bill built to hand President Trump the leverage to squeeze the war toward an end, and he was rushing home to move it. Posts racked up millions of views claiming Russia had silenced him to kill that deal. To a certain corner of the internet, a hawk that inconvenient made an obvious target, though the posts offered timing, not proof. Then came a second name, Iran. It was not the first time his name had surfaced there. After he pushed hard for strikes on Iranian targets, Graham had become a marked man in Tehran, and only days before his death, Iranian voices had listed him among their enemies. His face flashed at a memorial for their fallen leader. When he died, Iranian state television did not bother to hide its joy.
I congratulate the Iranian nation on warmongering anti-Iran U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham being sent to hell.
It was a story that almost told itself, but stripped the noise days away, and not one major outlet has stood up the foul play claims. Officials have framed it as a medical death, not a murder, and doctors note that sudden cardiac arrest is not rare in older men after a long flight and a punishing schedule. No finding has been released to say otherwise, and sudden cardiac death claims many older adults every year with no warning at all. Investigators put out no autopsy, and his family asked only for prayers, not answers. With no evidence of a plot, the story turned to what his death leaves behind. The aftermath. That inheritance was messy. Overnight, his death cracked open a Senate seat and threw South Carolina politics into a scramble. The governor can name a caretaker at once, but because Graham was up for re-election, the seat still has to be won at the ballot box, kicking off a sprint primary within weeks. And back home, the guessing over that caretaker started fast, with one name on everybody's lips.
There's some rumors that Governor McMaster might appoint himself. McMaster has held every position, every statewide position in South Carolina.
Whoever takes the seat will face a Democrat, pediatrician Annie Andrews, already waiting in November. The tributes, meanwhile, poured in from every side. President Trump called him one of the greatest senators he had ever known. Volodymyr Zelensky mourned a friend of Ukraine, and colleagues on both sides remembered a man who could fight you one day and cut a deal with you the next. But the loss landed heaviest far from Washington, in the small South Carolina town that raised him, where he had grown up working the family bar and pool hall before law school, the Air Force, and a seat he would hold for more than 20 years. He had won it 4 times, chaired the powerful Judiciary Committee, and become one of the most quoted voices in the country, loved and loathed in equal measure. His death also thinned an already fragile Senate majority, landing just as Washington was still absorbing the hospitalization of Mitch McConnell.
Can you tell me a little bit about your reaction this morning?
I was shocked. When I got up, my wife told me that Senator Graham had passed and sort of numb.
So here is what actually happened. A senator flew home from a war zone, worked the phones, and died that same night of an apparent cardiac arrest. The evidence points to a worn-out heart, not a hidden hand. But the timing was loud enough that, for some, the questions may never fully die down. Thanks for watching.